Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me for another of my wonderful interviews. Today, I want to explore wellness. Are you well, or are you feeling a little bit under the weather? Well, don't panic, because my next guest is a proper real expert. I have, let me say, the author of the Natural Wellness Journal, the host of #1 podcast, The Wellness Way with Philly J. Lay, and a self-healer who's survived a near-death medical procedure. Sounds very exciting. Philly J. Lay, welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard. It is absolutely lovely to be here. Great fan of the show. So thank you so much for having me on.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So we are going to be talking about wellness. You've got the #1 podcast. Now, I always, it makes me smile when anyone says, oh, it's bestseller this, #1 podcast this. But you actually did get on the #1 slot for several times.
Yes, I got 13 slots on the Apple podcast charts.
Oh, well
So
done.
for courses in wellness, because I also have a course available on my webpage, basically charting the journey that I've been on to heal myself, which is what my book charts as well.
Fantastic. Now, it's as I said in the intro, as I gabbled that out, and I've written it down here, self-healer from a near-death medical procedure. Well, I can't let that go without some explanation.
So, 9.5 years ago, I had a spinal fusion and they missed my spine with the anesthetic and I nearly died.
Blimey.
Um, yeah. And I didn't come round. I do remember coming round from the operation and I will hear my scream until the day I die. I've worked a lot on the trauma of that, but it was terrifying. I mean, the pain was just extraordinary and my body completely closed down. But my life wasn't saved that day by a surgeon. It was actually saved by the registrar of the hospital, who just stayed by my bed. And she just kept saying, where's your happy place? Come on, let's go to your happy place, find your happy place. And I couldn't do that. So after 24 hours, my husband, my then husband, and my two children were phoned and asked to come in to see me. And they thought they were saying goodbye to me. And my children were my happy place. And I came round.
Gosh, what an amazing experience. I mean, a horrific experience at the same time. Um, so, so a spinal fusion is what does that mean?
So the bottom disc in my back had collapsed. And I'd had an operation a couple of years beforehand where they'd done what they call a scrape and they just take off what's bulging out. But it then completely shattered. And I had to go in, and it's a long procedure because they cut you open and they have to pick out all of the bone that was shattered. And then they put a metal cage in, and then they have to graft the bones to it and the nerves. Unfortunately, my nerves got cut off and I didn't have any feeling below my waist for nearly 2 years.
Wow.
Um, and I used to sit there with pins and prick my leg and just kind of go, can I feel you again, please? And I couldn't. And I spent 2 years of my life in bed, completely addicted to opioids, overuse of alcohol, was obviously suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and just really didn't leave my bed for 2 years. And I got absolutely huge. I just kind of relied on, my kids would bring me some microwave meals, and friends would call in and see you. Especially at the beginning, but then I have to say, they kind of get bored of it after a while. I get it. But they would bring cakes and, you'd sit there just stuffing your face. And one friend of mine says she remembers popping over in the morning after she dropped her kids at school. So about 8:30 in the morning. She said, and you were sitting there in bed and you were taking opioids and you were downing it with a bottle of wine. And I obviously have no recollection of these 2 years of my life whatsoever. But quite traumatic for my children.
Yeah.
The only kind of real solace I got from that was my sister used to bring my elderly mum over every kind of other Sunday to see me. and because I couldn't drive, and I used to go and visit mum every week, and mum was on a Zimmer frame, and we'd share the Zimmer frame, and that's the only time really that I got out of bed voluntarily, because mum would just say, come on, let's go and have a walk around the garden,
Mm.
and then she'd just tell me what the plants were, and we'd smell them together, and that was a huge relief, getting out in nature. But I was in such a bad place, I didn't actually get out of bed to go downstairs and cut my eldest daughter's 13th birthday cake, which is something I can never bring back
Mm.
or rectify. But I couldn't. There was just nothing in me that could go downstairs.
That now. I mean, I lost an eye, and I had 4 years of protracted pain where I had to shut the curtains and couldn't do a lot. But the thing that kept me going was the kids, and so I can fully. I mean, obviously, our situations are completely different, but I can fully understand when you get to sort of rock bottom, and there's nowhere else, that the only place is up. And I can see that what you've just explained there, then suddenly going into wellness is an incredibly important journey to go to, because you've been right down. But before we get there, the business about near death. Now you see on the internet loads of people sort of going, oh yes, I saw this light and I now know what's happening. Did you get any of that?
I didn't see a light. I can hear the scream, and then the next thing I remember is coming round and seeing my daughter's faces. But I thought I did that kind of like an hour later. And it was only in 2020, actually, I found out that, um, you know, obviously my ex-husband was phoning the doctors and saying, can I come in? And they were going, no, you can't, sorry, a bit of a complication. No, no, no. And then the following day they phoned. So I don't have a recollection of that period. My closest friend and soulmate, who is now dead, she had a near death experience, and she did see the light and the tunnel. And I've joked many times, but I'll say it again because a lot of people do see that light. When my time comes and I see that light, if I see that light, I'm going in the other direction just in case it is another vagina. I'm not going there.
I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but there you go. You never know. It's the light to
Yeah.
another life. How interesting. I had an eye operation when they had to remove my eye because I wear a prosthesis now, and when this was at Moorfields Eye Hospital, and I remember waking up after, in the middle of the night. I wasn't due to wake up until later on in the morning, but I woke up a bit early from the anaesthesia and all. And above me were two ambulance ladies in their green fatigues, and I looked about disorientated because at that point I couldn't even remember I was having had the operation. It was just like I've woken up. Oh, blimey. And they said, don't worry, sir. There's just been a slight complication. Your heart stopped while you were on the operating table. But the funny part of it was, if you can call it funny, and I always look for the lighter side, is they said, we've got to take you to another hospital because this is Moorfields Eye Hospital. We don't do hearts. And I just thought that was hilarious. It's like, oh, right, okay, so I nearly died, but we're going to take you to another hospital that will actually check you out. And as it happened, everything was fine. They obviously got my heart going again, and they just wanted to monitor me, I suppose. But I was completely out, so I wasn't aware what happened, and I probably didn't die or anything. It was just like the heart stopped for a moment, and they got it going again. But it is.
Quite terrifying.
It is after the event when they tell you, and you think, "Oh, blimey, really?" So yeah, does that put you off hospitals?
I'm massively put off hospitals, and I have to say that we talked about the spinal fusion, but that wasn't my journey into wellness.
Right.
I kind of accepted that it was shit. Things happen,
Mm.
and that's kind of. But I was lucky to be alive, and I kind of accepted it to a degree. And Danny said to me at the time, I think we should sue the hospital. And I couldn't, because I couldn't relive what I'd gone through. I couldn't talk to a solicitor. I couldn't talk to the hospital. When I went back for my first checkup, I remember Danny saying to the surgeon, that was a complete disaster. You know, you nearly killed her. And the surgeon just said, no, the operation was a success. It was the anesthetic that was a disaster. And it's like, and they don't connect the body in any shape or form.
Yes.
And I continued just to kind of get iller and iller. And I had a frozen shoulder. I had autoimmune diseases popping up everywhere. And I was also suffering over this period with a lot of grief. I lost the 4 women who formed me. So first of all, my sister died of motor neurons disease. Then my mum died. Then my friend Sarah and my best friend and soulmate Polly. So I was suffering from huge amounts of grief. And through all of that trauma, I then discovered a really massive lump in my throat, a tumour.
Oh
And with
God.
that, I did go and see my GP, and I sat there and I cried, you know, this lump of a woman that couldn't do anything. And I just sat there crying. And so he was kind of going, okay, so let's go through this and this and this. And I ended up seeing 4 consultants in a week. And I kept saying to them, is everything connected? And they don't know because they're not taught to connect the body. So it's like you with the heart attack in an eye hospital. It's like, I'm going to take the tumor out and you could lose your thyroid. I'm going to operate on your shoulder. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I had the tumor out, which I now regret because I know what I could have done to get rid of it. But at the time, they scare you. You know, they put fear into you. And then I decided to stop all other treatment. And I thought, okay, that's it. And they said, right, you're going to have to go on thyroxine. We saved half your thyroid, but you're going to have to go on thyroxine for the rest of your life. And I thought, no, I'm not doing that. And so I started a journey. And it was quite scary. And I was very much on my own and looking for information. And it was really hard to find the information. I'd been looking for information prior to that, certainly on cancer, because Polly had cancer and my friend Sarah had cancer. I'd been looking at Alzheimer's and everything with my mom. I've been looking at motor neurons disease for my sister. So I had kind of started a journey, but not for me. And then I kind of thought, no, I've got to do this for me. And I'm going to start with diet and nutrition, and I'm going to sort all of that out, and I should be okay. And that was my hope, and I started on that journey.
Wow. So, and it's interesting because you talk about how atomized all these people are. They've got their little speciality, and I mean, right down at your GP, who doesn't really, unless you're overweight, doesn't ask you what you're eating. And yet so much of that, as more and more people I think are beginning to realise, is so important to what's going to suddenly start to manifest in your body.
Well, I was severely overweight and my GP didn't ask what I was eating. I mean,
right.
He just accepted I was ill, really.
Yes.
Didn't weigh me and I was size 18 or something, you know. I mean, and I'm only 5 foot, so you know, not a big person, apart from I was that way. But no, they don't connect the dots at all. And I thought everything, and I did get a lot better when I started my path with diet and nutrition. I started intermittent fasting. I started detoxing, coffee enemas, doing a lot of coffee enemas to, you know, clean the liver out.
So hang on a minute. What is a coffee enema?
It's green coffee, not drinking coffee.
Right.
And you put it up your bottom.
Okay.
And it flushes out your colon, but it also detoxes your liver. So it is a massive, massive detoxer for the liver. And your liver, you know, we live in a toxic world. And that was also, you know, what I was learning on this journey, not just with food. I was learning things like, you know, I'd have candles sometimes in the living room. And then I realized that they were all soy wax. And 85% of the soy in the world is GMO. And therefore I was sitting there not eating glyphosate, but burning it. I was still using makeup, which I don't use anymore. And if you're wondering, this is all beautiful natural oils that I use now from Nibu Naturals. And I only have to have a natural mascara and that's it. So I don't have to use toxic makeup anymore. I'd stopped wearing perfume when I was pregnant, actually, because I knew in my heart of hearts that it would, the skin is the largest organ of the body, and I knew that. And I didn't want the perfume soaking through when I was pregnant, and certainly when I was breastfeeding, I didn't want the smell of perfume. I wanted, my babies to smell me and to bond with me. So I kind of knew things like that.
Well, that's, I mean, just let me just pause you there, because that's an absolutely fascinating thing, because we're all persuaded so much by mainstream media and commercials in particular, all sorts of different things that are supposed to improve our lifestyle. And of course, we're all horrible, nasty, smelly creatures. So we need these man-made artificial odors to sort of mask all that horrible, nasty BO that apparently we all have. And if you do, and if you're a bloke, say, the adverts will show millions of cave women coming charging after you in certain adverts or whatever it is, and if you're a woman, of course, the men will drop at your knees because you smell like whatever it might be. But clearly, until fairly recently, we never had any of those products, and we managed quite well.
We didn't. And you have to look, with everything, you have to look at why it's happening. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And the body is naturally programmed to want to heal itself. And if you're smelling pretty toxic, it's because your body is trying to detox toxins. So you've just got to look at that. I very rarely smell now. Occasionally, especially if I've had a treat. I live on the 80-20 rule, so now if it's my girls' birthdays, for a few years I tried cooking them organic, gluten-free, sugar-free cakes, but for their birthdays, but they just didn't quite feel the same about their birthday cake. So I went back to an organic birthday cake with a lot less sugar. But if I eat some crap, then I will smell a bit. But instead of perfume, I blend my own essential oils, and essential oils were a massive part of my healing journey. And they have everything is energy, and they have these wonderful energies. I remember going I was at Russell Brand's comedy show last summer, or show, not comedy, and I was just handing my ticket over, and the lovely young lady who was taking the ticket just went, "Oh, you smell lovely." And she went, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry," and I said, "Oh, I just blended my own oils," and she went, "Oh wow, what are they?" And I went, "Oh, I don't know, whatever." I have them all laid out in my bathroom with the base oil, and then I smell them and just see what my body needs that day. Very often there's frankincense. I love frankincense. And if you look at baby Jesus, basically he was given a medicine chest. He was given gold was the biblical name for turmeric.
Right. Okay.
Turmeric, frankincense, and myrrh. And they're three of the biggest hitters of the oils. I mean, they're massive. So he was given a medicine chest, and they do have these wonderful properties, very, very healing, very soothing. They all, like all plants, they have different mechanisms to interact with our energy, and heal you or calm you down, or whatever you need. I think most people know that lavender will put you to sleep and relax you, and it's why your granny always had a lavender bag. And but every single one has a wonderful kind of journey it can take you on. And if you look at the works of Dr. Emoto, the works of Dr. Emoto.
I've heard the name. I've heard the name, but yeah.
So he worked with water, and I'll actually show you, Richard, because I've got some of his pictures in my book. So I don't know if you can see those, and all words have meaning. So when he spoke to them nicely, and then froze and photographed through the microscopes the water particles. So, this one here, he's saying, "You are beautiful." And it's a beautiful, lovely star. And then "thank you" is a beautiful, lovely star. But this one's interesting. So this is a really ugly shape, and it's just "do it."
Oh, right.
And then underneath is "you fool," and it's really ugly. But next to that, this is fascinating. Instead of "do it," it's "let's do it," which
Ah,
means you're doing it
it's
together,
inclusive. Yeah.
collectively. It's inclusive. And so it is a beautiful shape again. And Dr. Emoto, he did a lot of work, not only with words, but with music, with meditation. And he also did essential oils next to water. And again, you can see all the beautiful shapes that come. And the energies of those oils are shown in the shapes, and it's quite fascinating. Water holds our energy. It's energy.
Wow. Okay. That's, I mean, you see, I'm on this very learning journey myself, having only sort of started up this side of my podcast. And there's so many interesting people like you, and so many people are telling me very similar things, and the dots are slowly joining, and hopefully with the audience they're doing the same. Those people, I mean, many of my audience already know so much of this, and then they'll find somebody like you and they go, wow, this is really, because it's adding to my knowledge as it is mine. So yeah, so just tell me a bit more about the energy and the water's relation, because we're obviously made up of water
Yep.
in large proportion.
Well, we're virtually all water,
Yes.
actually.
Which is hard to think when when you tap yourself and you hurt you and you graze yourself and things like that, and you go, oh no, I nearly scraped the bone then.
So we're kind of water and energy. So even a solid wall is just energy, and it's just how we visualize everything. But if we came out of water. That's how we originated. The first
Yes.
little membranes came out of the water, and we grew. I believe we have these extraordinary powers that we haven't tapped into in any shape or form yet, and I'm fascinated by the pyramids, and there are far greater pyramids and bigger pyramids than the ones in Egypt that we know about. And everybody says the slaves made them, but you know there's a lot of talk and theory about whether they could use sound vibration to
Yes,
lift.
I've heard. I've heard, and all of this is great because the media now, the alternative media, is letting that information out, and people are sort of able to accept it or not accept it depending on where they are in their journey of life. But absolutely, and sound and what you're saying about water therapies and things like that, it's absolutely it is gobsmacking because, as you said, I feel that we're in a very narrow band that we've been kept in deliberately,
Oh,
maybe
yes.
so, or whatever, and yet everything is, as I said, I'm on this journey, and you sort of go, yeah, there's more to what we know here. There is just got to be.
Far more. So my journey actually then continued having, kind of, I mean, I get into an Uber, and if they had an air freshener, I'd be hysterical. I'd be just going, oh my God, all those chemicals. And, I lived this very clean life. For 6 months, I went on full detox, and I will actually say that if you're doing a full detox, you should absolutely do it under supervision. It's not something to be done lightly. But I now detox a little bit every day. And so there are, green powders in my diet every day. And if you look at the works of Dr. Gerald Pollack, actually, and again, I've got a section of him on him in my book. He did a TED talk, a TED Salon talk. I think it was 2019, November 19, he did it. And he talks about the fourth stage of water, which he discovered, which is called exclusion zone water. And it was discovered actually by one of his pupils by mistake, who went out at lunchtime and left the lights on in the labs. And when they came back, these mitochondria under the labs had just kind of grown and flourished, and all the telomeres were standing on end, and they're kind of going, oh, what's happened here? And they turned the lights off, and then they went down again, and they turned them on. They went, oh, and now they're coming up again. And this went on. He went, okay, so there's another stage of water. We have the first stage of photosynthesis, which had never been recognized before. Wow. And so you kind of have to wonder with my hat on, my beautiful shiny hat on, you have to wonder why we were told to wear sunblock, because it does exactly what it says on the bottle.
Yes, blocks out the sun.
We need that sunlight, we need that vitamin D, but we are also photosynthesis, and that rebuilds our body. And then if you add to that, taking your shoes off and getting your grounding in, I sleep on a grounding sheet as well, and then you're just recharging your battery. The earth is one big, beautiful, giant battery to recharge us, and we need the sunlight to do that. And they've put us in shoes, they've blocked out our sun, and no wonder we are failing with our health, really. And it's a time now to get back to nature, to understand what is going on, how we can heal, and learn more about the energy. And it wasn't until about 3 years after this journey had started on diet, nutrition, grounding, and everything, that I put a post up on Facebook, and I was in a very bad way, even with the diet change and everything. I was still in a bad way emotionally. And my marriage was coming to an end, and I was contacted by an old friend who I hadn't seen for 22 years. We'd lost contact, but I followed her on Facebook because she was very interesting. And she messaged me and said, listen, I'm doing a course in September and I think you should come along. Can you send me your email? So I did. I looked at the course, never heard of it, EFT and matrix reimprint, didn't know what it was, but I looked at the price of the course. And in those days, I didn't understand that investing in yourself is hugely important. And also I was getting a divorce, and I kind of thought, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to live, so maybe I should pass. And as I thought that, she sent me a message and said, by the way, it's a gift. And when the universe gives you a gift, you take it. And I went, oh, wow, thank you so much. And I went along, and it was something called EFT. Do you know about EFT?
EFT, again, it's a vaguely familiar, but I couldn't tell you what it stood for. I'm writing it down. EFT.
Emotional freedom technique.
Wait a minute.
Is known as tapping.
I had a chap on here whose name, he does Happy Mind, Happy Place, and he was talking about tapping, and as you tap, you ask it questions, or you tell it questions, and things like that. That's right. That's why it's a very spiritual gentleman, and his name will come to me. And if he's watching, I apologise for temporarily forgetting his name. That's right. EFT, emotional frequency. Did you say it was emotional frequency?
Freedom technique. Freedom technique, because if you look at the stress in the body, and everything that goes on. I'm also now trained in metaconsciousness, but if you look at everything that goes on in the body, it is all to do with stress and trauma and triggers that we've taken from our lives and our past lives, and our ancestors. If you think that your grandmother grew your egg, you've taken on her trauma and your mother's trauma straight away, and then you put the ancestral traumas into that as well. But I went along to this course, and I have to say I thought it looked completely barking mad, and I'm sitting there and everybody's tapping, and I'm going, can I go, and I'm like thinking, oh, it would be really rude when somebody's giving you a gift to just get up and walk out. And so I kind of thought, okay, tomorrow I will just message in the morning and go, I'm really sorry, one of my children's ill and I can't come in today, and just walk away. I was kind of rather perturbed by it. And at 11 o'clock on the dot, I remember letting out this almighty scream. Really, not like the fusion, but it was still pretty bad. And I fell on the floor. And Penny, my trainer and mentor, picked me up, and I said, I don't know what's happening. I've got to go. I've got to go. I think I need to go to the hospital. And she went, no, 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 no. And she sat me on a chair, and everybody's sitting around, and they all carry on tapping. And she's talking and she's tapping on me too. And I'm just kind of crying because I didn't understand what was going on in my body. And it was 2 hours later, dead on 1 o'clock, that Penny hit the next slide in the course and said, and that is a perfect example of chasing the pain. And I kind of went, what's chasing the pain? And I had felt the pain move all over my body. And I could give it a color because your practitioner will say, give it a color, give it a form, you give it an intensity of 0 to 10, obviously 10 being the maximum. And I could just see and chase this pain around my body. And it was quite extraordinary. And I was exhausted after 2 hours, and I had to go and lie down for a bit. And the next day I worked with somebody, and again, the same thing happened. And I started clearing the layers of the huge amounts of trauma that I had gone through in the last few years. And actually, the trauma had started before that. I mean, the trauma starts from birth. Well, for me, definitely I had a lot of trauma in the womb because my mum was an older mum, and she had 5 children already, and she didn't want a 6th. So she asked her doctor if she could abort me, and the doctor said no. This is back in the early 60s, so it wasn't normal. So my mum tried to commit suicide and failed. So she was arrested, as you were then, and she was put into Littlemore Mental Asylum. So my early days in the womb, I was in a mental asylum. And talking about EFT, I then went on to train as a matrix re-imprint practitioner, where you use EFT, but then you take your echo out to the matrix and you deal with traumas that have happened in your life. And one day I found myself in the pitch black, and I just kind of kept shaking like this. It was really, really rigid. And I was scratching my body, and I didn't know what was happening. And, I went through with Penny for an hour and a half tapping. And it was absolute pitch black. And she asked me where I thought I was. And I said, I think I'm in my mother's womb. And this was about 2 years after my mum had died. And I'd had a falling out with my sisters when my mum died, because we had different beliefs on her treatment at the end. And I hadn't heard from them at all, really, since the funeral. But while I was out in the matrix, I brought my sisters and my father into the picture, and we were all tapping on each other. And because you can do this remotely, so you just tap on their backs and you get them to tap on each other.
So are you visualizing that they're there and tapping? Yeah.
You're feeling your echo out there. So this was Philly J. Lay as a fetus, with my siblings at the age that they would have been when I was, in my mother's womb.
So are you saying that you're tapping through time, as it were, back to when you were smaller?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And bring them into the picture.
Yeah.
I've tapped my ancestors too. And I know it sounds crazy.
I'm just trying to sort of get this so that anybody coming to this afresh is not thinking, hang on, Richard's gone mad. He's got some loony on the show today and it's gone too far. But
I'll tell you how extraordinary this is, Richard. That night I went home, and my second eldest sister phoned me for the first time in 2 years as to see how I was. And I'm like, oh, hello. Because I realized out there that they had gone through tremendous trauma with their mama being taken away. And I'd never thought about that.
Yeah,
my eldest sister was 16 and had to become head of, the woman of the household. And my dad had severe Parkinson's. So, she was looking after dad, cooking and cleaning, trying to do school exams, and a kind of so all of them had this period of their life that was terrible for them, which I'd never thought about before.
No.
So anyway, my second eldest sister phoned me and went, "Hello, my lovely. I just wondered how you are." And I'm like, "Oh, hello. I'm okay, actually." And we were talking, and I said to her, out of interest, do you think Mum had electric shocks in Littlemore? And she said, "Oh, I don't think so, because it was illegal in the early 60s. So I don't think for 1 minute she would have." And I went, "Okay," because I kind of thought maybe that's what it was, because it felt really shocking. And we chatted for a couple of hours, and I hung up and said goodbye. 5 minutes later, my phone goes again. It's my eldest sister. And I'm going, "Oh, gosh, hello." And she went, "Hello, darling. I just wondered how you are." And I went, "Oh, I'm okay. How are you?" And we chatted for a couple of hours. And I said to her, "Do you know how Dad got Mum out of Littlemore? Because, 1963, you went into a mental institution as a woman. You didn't come out. I mean, very few of them came out." And she said, "Oh, that's easy. Dad found out they were giving her electric shocks."
Ah.
And I went, "Something happened today." And I told her about it. And she went, "You're crazy." I went, "I know, but isn't it really weird that both, two sisters phoned me?" And then I started testing this and tapping on other people, and going out into the matrix. And when I think about people, and when I really connect with them and I tap on them, they message me or call me. And I did it the other day in front of a friend. And I was just saying, "I really want this person to text me and ask me something." And she said, "Well, text and ask them." I went, "No, I want them to text and ask me." And so I just literally tapped, went out to the matrix, told them what I'd like them to ask me. Within seconds, the text had come through asking the exact same question. This is what I mean, Richard. We are touching the tip of the iceberg of our abilities to connect with each other.
Just explain what you mean when you say going out of the matrix. How do you? What does that incur?
Okay, so matrix re-imprinting was developed by a wonderful man called Carl Dawson, who I've also had the pleasure to train with. And he was a tapper. He discovered tapping, EFT. And he just took it one stage further. He's a published Hay House author about the huge abilities that we have. And he calls it matrix re-imprinting. So it's not the Matrix that we're talking about, as in the movie The Matrix, right, or any of that. It just means that we're kind of going out into the universe. We're going, you can call it whatever you like, but Carl calls it the Matrix. You don't go out, because it's quite, the times that I have taken myself out there, I have gone into an abreaction, an adverse reaction, because very often you can encounter traumas that you had forgotten about, and it can be quite scary, traumatic. So that is something that you have to do with a practitioner. Yeah, so it's just, you're just going out there. You can call it, the universe.
So when you say you're going out there, I mean, what, mentally you're going out there, not physically? You're not climbing a ladder and jumping off the house or anything?
No, it's mentally, but it's a little bit more than mentally, because you feel yourself out there. You put your echo back into that position. So one of my big traumas in my life was when I was 6 years old and my granny died, and we all absolutely adored Granny Lay. We all kind of went from school straight to Granny Lay's house, and that was where you went, and that's where you got your treat, because Mum wasn't going to give you a treat when you came in from school. But it was in the days, where people had restraint. So she would buy a Mars bar, and they weren't big Mars bars in those days, and she would literally cut you off a centimetre. And that was your treat. It wasn't like Mars bar. Now, we just all go and shove our faces full of this stuff with no restraint on it. But so it was always really exciting to go and see Granny. And then I go home and have my healthy tea. And when Granny died, because I was 6, my parents deemed that I was too young to go to the funeral, that it wasn't appropriate. And so I was sent to school as a normal school day. And I just remember sitting there and crying all day, coming home from school. And they were all still down at the funeral. And I was sitting on the doorstep and I just sat there and cried for about 2 hours. And then somebody kind of went, "Oh my God, where's Philly?" And somebody rushed home and let me in. But all my siblings were there and all my family, and I didn't feel part of it. And so I had a limiting belief, because these are all what you learn to do and you use tapping and matrix for, is to address the limiting beliefs that you have formed in your life. Okay. And so I had this very limiting belief that I was abandoned, that I was unwanted, that I wasn't part of my family. And so that had shaped how my relationship with my family, with my sisters in particular, and my brother. And so I was able to kind of rebuild that, and I still have a lot of work to do on it. I'm not going to lie. We've done tremendous. We come a really long way, and then 2020 happened, and we had very different views as to what was going on. And I know that I do sound crazy to a lot of people. So when people are saying to me, "Oh, for God's sake, wear a mask, and you've got to have, this, that, and the other interventions," and and I was going, "Listen, I can, nothing will hurt me unless I allow it to, and I don't allow it to." And so, that has caused quite a lot of friction that we're still working on. As more information comes out, I hope that one day that will get healed. But I don't have enough time. I could spend the time going out into the matrix and do a lot more work on it. But, I have dedicated the last 3 years of my life to getting this information out to people. And that's why I wrote my book. And so, that's my book. There we go. And on the back, I have the energy vibrational scale, because we live in an energy vibration. This is from Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force. And we live right at the bottom. You've got shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. And all of those were very much how we were living in 2020. And I just thought if everybody knew what I knew, they wouldn't have fear. They wouldn't have guilt. They wouldn't have shame, because, there was a lot of gaslighting on, and we, felt fear and shame and a huge amount of grief. And obviously I trained with the brilliant, oh gosh, now I've got a name block like you. There's a fantastic book called Joy Beyond Grief by the wonderful Janice Thompson. That's now available. That's just come out. But I trained with Janice when I was dealing with the grief of losing all the people that I lost. And I learned that the grief isn't just about losing a loved one, which I thought it was. But, it's losing a job, a house, your freedom, an education, a childhood, your health. And I'd lost my health, and I'd lost, a lot of these things. I'd lost my marriage. So there was an awful lot of grief for me to process. And, I'm still on a healing journey. I'm nowhere near there yet, and nobody ever gets there. It is a learning journey, but I really believe that you just keep going, and every step you take is a step in the right direction. And I just thought, right, I've got to write a book. So I wrote and published my book in 2.5 months. I was just like, I've got to get this out. And I signed it off on December the 21st, the winter solstice, 2020. And I have been on the Hay House writers course, and I told Reed Tracy, the CEO of Hay House, that I was going to publish before Christmas. And this was in October, and he just laughed and said, "Good luck with that." I didn't realize that it normally takes a year or two to write a book. So I just thought, I can do this. And I wrote 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I downloaded it. And I signed it off on the 21st of December, and I was self-publishing with Balboa. I had to forego an editor, the editing process, because I wanted to get it out. And I said to Balboa, will you please get it up before Christmas? And they kind of went, oh, it's tough, but we'll mark it urgent. And I was completely exhausted that day. And I lay on the bed. And for the winter solstice, I joined everything I possibly can. So I was doing Soma breath work, and I'm now a qualified Soma breathwork coach, and I love breath work.
What breath work?
Soma.
Soma.
Soma breath work. So it's all about, it's rhythmical breathing with holds, and it is the science of magnetic breathing, with the brilliant Niraj, who's been on my podcast. And it is, again, it takes you to a whole nother level of release of trauma and everything. It's quite remarkable. And you're also getting in your NO, your nitric oxide, which the body needs to repair. It is miracle. It's why I tape my mouth at night. I don't know, do you tape your mouth at night?
I have done. I read a book called Breath by
Patrick.
Somebody.
No.
Begins with N. Somebody. Anyway, it's on my shelf. It's called Breath, and he was a journalist who explored all this, looked at why heads had changed their shape, why the nasal capacities had shrunken because we shallow breathe. And one of the things that he recommended was taping his mouth, or our mouths, so that you train yourself to breathe only through the nose, because he did an experiment over something like 10 weeks. Just
deep sea diving. He was working with some deep sea
That's
diving.
right. Yes, that's right. And he did an experiment in which he only breathed through his mouth for 10 weeks and got very ill. But he carried on the process, and then he only breathed through his nose. And of course, now he just breathes through his nose because he did all the research. There was Otto, was it Otto or Oscar or something? It's all coming back.
Otto Warburg, who won the
there you go
Nobel Peace, who won the Nobel Prize in 1936.
Yes, but
I think he discovered NO because the way his papers are written, it cites that nothing, including cancer, can grow in an alkaline body, and the best way to alkaline a body is through breath work.
Now, before we go any further, because I know we're going to talk about your podcast and what have you, you mentioned a couple of things that, because you're so knowledgeable about what I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to just clarify a couple of things. So one thing you mentioned, that you talk about your echo. Could you just explain what you mean by that?
It's your energetic being. So it's your energy. Now, it does actually stand for something, for the life of me, because I've just for so long called it my echo.
But you were saying your echo. So I was thinking it was like, I don't know, your past that you're trying to send out. So because of the word echo. So I was trying to work that out.
It is your past. It is, it's you. And now it could be you in your childhood. It could be you in a past life. It could be you 1 minute ago. And it's your energetic being. And that is who you send out. And then you ask your echo, you have to keep your echo safe, because you don't know what trauma they're going to encounter. So it's really important to keep them safe. And you ask them what they would like to bring in, whether they want their angel wings, if they're, a color, a smell, if they're dealing with somebody that they are frightened of, somebody, I've had this experience with an attack that I had, and I didn't want to deal with this and this person. And so what my coach did was we put a glass sheet up, and then we shrunk the man and made him very small. And so we made me very powerful, and then I could just tap on him through the glass and just let him know exactly what I thought of him, what he did, and then we blew it out of the water. I can't tell you, I won't divulge what we did. There are two trains of thought as to whether you're allowed to be violent or not violent.
Okay. So a lot. There's a lot to get your head around, especially if you're new to all of this. And so my job is to think of the audience, and they may go, "Hang on a minute, what are you talking about?" So just in that instance, I mean, do you mean a real piece of glass, or is this a mental piece of glass? You know, what are you?
A mental piece of glass, or
Is a lot of this mental work? I mean,
it's all
because
mental.
obviously you can't
It's all,
reduce someone in real life into a tiny little thing and belittle them.
no, it's all in the mind. You see them small, you
Yeah.
put the sheet of glass in. You know, for me, I bring in my angel wings. I love my angel wings wrapped around me. So I take them, I always have my angel wings in the matrix. But you can bring in colors. When my marriage ended, and it was an amicable divorce. We had just grown apart because he thought I'd gone mad. So we just, I saw him on the other side of we had a lake between us. I didn't need to put glass or make him small
A
because
physical, a mental lake.
a mental lake
Mental.
there. And I put a mental silk thread between us. And then I just cut the thread and released it and sent him flowers. And I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but I just felt afterwards so relieved.
Is this a lot? Is this sort of symbolism working? By creating these symbol like a glass. You're cutting the thread, which symbolically says that's us over. You go your way, I'll go my way. Is it? I mean, I just because you're putting all this out there as if, and I'm not questioning whether it's true or not. But I'm just knowing that there'll be skeptical viewers going, "Oh, what is this all about?" So I'm just trying to sort of fathom it out for myself. So I mean, you're using a lot of symbolism about the angel wings around you, and these are mental pictures that you're conjuring up that presumably are psychically helping you or assisting, but because you're using visualization to create these things. Am I anywhere close?
Well, yes and no. We are self-fulfilling prophecies. So,
okay, so what does that mean? We are I mean, how do we become self-fulfilling prophecies? Are you saying this all happened before and we're just living through it?
not quite.
No.
So I'm going to take you back to when my book was signed off. And it was going to be virtually impossible to publish before Christmas. And I said I spent the day on the bed and I was doing tapping, matrix re-imprinting, which is how we got back to this. I was doing lots of soma breath work. I was doing didgeridoo. Absolutely love didgeridoo and the sound and the vibration.
Oh, right. So that's the literal.
It's quite a big.
Yeah. It's only because you've used lots of different names for different things. I just had to check that was a real didgeridoo.
That was a real didgeridoo.
Right.
All I did.
I just have got this image now of you lying on your bed with this massive long pole doing a didgeridoo. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
All I did was visualize my book. The only place I could get it up was Amazon. And I just visualized it on Amazon. And I'd said to Balboa, because they weren't sure if they could get it up or not, I said, could you contact Amazon and ask if we could get it up as a pre-order before Christmas? And they went, oh God, no way we can do that, because one, they would never do a pre-order for a first-time self-published author. Unheard of, not going to happen. And two, when we get it up, we have to now format it, get it up, and then they have a completely different format, and that takes a minimum of 2 weeks for Amazon to get up. But I lay there and I just visualized my book up on Amazon before Christmas. And then on the 23rd of December, I had a look on Balboa and I was up. They got me up. So I knew that one day I could read Tracy in the eye, hand in my book and go, I did it, which I've been able to do. But I also visualized it on Amazon. And on Boxing Day, actually, I kind of said to my daughter, I'm just going to check Amazon. She went, oh, for goodness sake, Mother, there's no point. It's not going to be up on Amazon. You know it's not. Don't be so stupid. And I checked Amazon. And there was my book up as a pre-order. And my publish date was the day I signed it off, the 21st of December, 2020. And you can go to Amazon, you can check that out, and that will forever be my publish date. And that's because I asked the universe for it. Now, to manifest is a little bit more complicated than asking. You just have to feel it and see it and believe it. And that's what Matrix is as well. You're feeling it and you're seeing it, and you're putting everything right, and you're talking about it. So it's kind of.
If you, I mean, earlier you alluded to, we had to use Amazon because it's, it's a big commercial thing and it's there. So why not? Why, if it seems to me you're not limited on what you could do, so why limited yourself to Amazon, not say HarperCollins or a published real life book instead of that? Is it because it was easier to see how they could achieve that rather than actually printing presses? And I don't know.
No, so there are two routes to go with a book. You can go the traditional route of going with a publish house. You have to get an agent to submit to a publish house. Yes. You can't just submit your book. Apart from Hay House UK, you can, but everybody goes in.
And I've tried to publish some children's books, and I've actually done the Amazon thing myself and uploaded it, and it's been there within a couple of days because I did all the files and the formatting and all of that a few years ago. So I understand all of that. What I'm saying is, it sounded as if you were using mental powers to put it onto Amazon when everybody said that was impossible. So my question was, if you could use those mental powers to do that, then surely you could sort of actually manifest it as a real life coffee table book that's available in the shops.
Absolutely. Well, it is but I mean,
on Christmas Day, there it was in Blackstones and.
Okay, so when you go to a publishing house, you will have an editor, and they will decide what and what you can't say. Really, you don't have a final say on what is published.
But what I'm saying is, it sounded as if you were using the mental powers to do the impossible because you're yourself, and if you were able to do the impossible, I'm just curious, and I don't mean to sort of question anything, but surely.
Why didn't I do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know you need all these editors and stuff, but the magic of the mind and what have you would just make it work. Could it not have just made it work so that if you were that determined, it would just go ping, there it is.
I'm sure I can do that, but I didn't want to be told what and what I couldn't write.
No.
When you go with a publishing house, it's a 2-year process to get a book out. So it would just be coming out now. I didn't want to go that route. I wanted, I started writing the book on the 16th of October, 2020, and I wanted it out before Christmas. And absolutely the only way you can do that is to self-publish. Yes. There is no other.
And I don't want to labour this point. It's just that it seemed that you were able to use mental influence to create it to happen, and I just question, there seems to be obviously limits to that, to go down the publishing route where they go, it doesn't matter what you publish, doesn't matter, you say whatever you like, bang, it's the same magic that it seems to perhaps to make it appear just in a thing, as if all those problems that you describe with editors and agents and things would vanish because you're visualizing and getting the universe to do it. That was all I was thinking, is that there seemed to be, why would there be, if it's possible, one and the other. Why is it easier one way than the other?
The simple answer is that I didn't manifest that. I manifested what I wanted to do. I mean, I wasn't manifesting about the writing of the book, and therefore, whether I was writing with a publishing house or self-publishing. All I was manifesting on that day was seeing my book on Amazon. So that's what the universe did to me.
Cool. Earlier you mentioned, and I wrote it down, and this is going completely back to something else. You said your diet is full of green powders. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So I spoke earlier about EZ water.
Yes.
And you can get EZ exclusion zone water through greens. And that's why, your mother would always say when you were little, eat your greens, because your greens give you that EZ along with the sunshine. again, it's that photosynthesis. And there are two powders that I have every day because they help take heavy metals out of the body. And we know that we live in a toxic world, and we know that we're bombarded with a lot of heavy metals, mercury, aluminium, the list is endless. And this is what I was talking about earlier about detoxing a little bit every day. And those two green powders are spirulina and chlorella. And so I do have my smoothies. And, in my book, I have my daily essentials. And my daily essentials include flavonoid soups and smoothies. So depending on the season, in the winter, I have my soups. In the summer, I have my smoothies. And I get my greens down me. And I just keep taking out a little bit of those heavy metals every day. Now, obviously, the main aim is to get as few toxics as possible into your body. That's the key. But we can't avoid them. We live in homes where there is fire-resistant furniture around us, which is law, and there's nothing we can do about it. We have pretty patterns going on in the sky. We have, exhaust fumes. We live in a toxic world. We do. But we have to do everything, every tiny little thing we can, to just keep taking those out. Far infrared saunas, absolutely fantastic for that. They also repair you on a cellular level. And, we were talking about sweating earlier and smelling. And the body has, a number of ways to detox. And everybody kind of thinks of, kind of the bowels is the key one, and they have to be working properly every single day, at least once a day. And it should be absolutely perfect in format, like a banana. So a lot of people kind of go, I go every day, but they might have diarrhea or something. No, that means your gut's out of sync. You've got your urine. So I use a lot of herbal teas. So here I've got my dandelion and my stinging nettle in here. And, dandelion used to be called wet the bed. And people wet the bed, great for detoxing the kidneys. Then you've got your skin that you need to detox with sweating. So again, the fact that anybody will put certainly an antiperspirant, a deodorant's bad enough, but antiperspirant, no, you've got to sweat and you've got to let those toxins out. And then you've got your breath work, and you have to detox your lungs. So the detox process is a whole process, and we should all be doing a little bit of it every single day.
We've been chatting for an hour, so clearly there is so much to learn, and you have a podcast. People can listen to the podcast and find out a hell of a lot more. And so I want to point people to that. That's The Wellness Way with Philly J. Ley, which just comes off the tongue nice and easy. Where is that available?
Okay, so it's up on all podcast platforms.
Right.
The full video is only up on Rumble. But you can see, very short few-minute clips on YouTube, obviously for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But the full one is up on Rumble, and it's up on Apple and Spotify and all podcast stations. On my webpage, we have 3 episodes up at a time, so you can get them on my webpage.
And what's your webpage address? I'll put it in the description. But
phillyjley.com.
phillyjley.com. Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'll put links to all of these in the description, and we know where the book is.
We know where the book is.
But did you say it's now available in shops?
Yeah, so WH Smith and Waterstones and Barnes and Noble all picked it up online. If you don't want to buy it online, you can actually go into your Waterstones. I know some of my followers on Instagram are doing this and just going, can you order it for me? And they do, and you can pick it up in store now.
So can you get it from independent bookshops? I'm keen on promoting independent shops left, right and centre.
I'm very keen on independents, but I'm not sure that's available. But you can go and
You can ask and see if they can get it, because I suppose the more people that do ask independents, the request might filter through.
Absolutely. And if you sign up to my newsletter on phillyjlay.com, you get a newsletter, but you also get an exclusive free meditation called Walking into Your Future, because I have a meditation album that I wrote as well called The Wellness Awakening. And I love meditating. It's the most important time of my day when I'm in that half sleep. And then
When do you do that?
so in the morning, straight away, when I start coming round, I start my meditation on my own, in silence, and I do something called the Silvo technique. And then at 7:30, because I know what time I wake up, so then for half an hour later, I set my alarm, and I just have some very beautiful music coming on. And again, I put my hand on my heart because I'm a big fan of heart math. And I put my other hand out and I connect with anybody that I want to connect with that day. So I talk to my children. I talk to the universe. I do my blessing ball of light for my day. And then I put on a couple of other meditations. I do the Soma breath work, morning gratitude meditation, which I love. And I also do a Bob Proctor abundance meditation. So I kind of alternate those. So I'm a mad
Well, that's it. It's good to have mad people on the show for sure, giving an alternative view to life, and one that's actually quite helpful and useful to us, because we've seen how the old-fashioned way hasn't been as good. Thank you so much, Philly J. Lay, for coming on the show. I'll put all the links in the description. Clearly, I mean, from my point of view, there's a hell of a lot of terms that you've used in there, things I'm not 100% sure about, and I'm sure that's the same with many people. So going and finding out, reading your book, listening to the podcast and getting the newsletter, and understanding how the Silvo technique, I think you said there, for meditation.
Yes.
So all of that, so much, there is just, this whole sphere for newbies like me. There is so much to learn, and you kind of trying to learn it all at once, but obviously it's much better to learn it bit by bit by bit so you understand it.
Absolutely. And start slowly, don't get overwhelmed. And I'm actually working on my second book at the moment, which will be an ebook, and it'll be out in the autumn. And the reason I'm writing this book as an ebook is so that I can take you to video links with a QR code of the podcast to chunk down and just have a little look, get it explained by the experts, that I've learned from. And with all of these things, you have to take what suits you and, just pass on the things that don't suit you at the moment. Start slowly. If the one thing you do today is cut out deodorant or have your green smoothie, you've done really brilliantly.
Well, I'm going to spend the evening tapping myself all over and to see what happens.
I have lots of tapping podcasts over, and I've got the tapping points up there of where you tap, and it's the end of the energy meridians of the body. So it's basically acupuncture without the needles.
Fantastic. Philly, thank you so much for talking to me and explaining your situation and that awful situation that you went through as well. It's been absolutely a fascinating hour. I've really enjoyed it. Do check out Philly's books, podcasts, and meditations and stuff. And we'll have to get you back in a few months' time to sort of explore a bit more, if that's all right.
I'd love to, Richard. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It has been such a joy. And, as I said, I'm a big fan of your work. And I love the fact that, having gone through what we've all gone through in the last three years, that there seems to be this massive awakening now where people want to learn
absolutely
all the things that they can do for their health, so that they are, the doctor of your future is you.
The doctor of your future is you. And on that note, thanks everybody for watching. I shall be back again with more monologues and wonderful guests, but from Philly and I. Look after yourselves. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.